Welcome to Grace at the Fray, a podcast that explores the many dimensions of God's grace that we find at the frayed edges of life. Come explore how God's grace works to renew your life and send you on mission in His kingdom. Hello, beloved. Welcome to Grace at the Fray. All right, so let's be honest. When it comes to parenting, we all want perfect kids. Don't deny it just because it's impossible. It's still a desire. It's still there. And even before I was a parent, when I saw your kids at the grocery store, I really wanted them to be perfect too, for your sake and for my own. But I think a lot of why we desire perfect kids is because we aren't perfect. Parenting and raising children presents a continual opportunity to evaluate our own heart. It exposes our brokenness and sin. And just think about how quickly you can get irritated. Your instinct to discipline, its speed, its force, and its desired outcome. These are major opportunities for our hearts to be exposed, but it's also Jesus' invitation to teach us about His grace. Both for us and for our children, and to cultivate a place where grace can thrive. But being a parent or someone who is helping cultivate grace in the lives of children is not easy. That's why I called up my friend Debbie Harrell for some help. Since 2001, Debbie has been serving as the Overseas Educational Advisor for Serge. She supports our mission families by coming alongside them in a lot of really amazing ways. And I can't wait for you to hear about those. She's the author of a middle school Bible study curriculum called What's Up? Discovering the Gospel, Jesus, and Who You Really Are. And also the author of a book called The Gospel-Centered Parent. And Debbie came into the studio to talk with me about her ministry to all the third culture kids in our company and the unique challenges and opportunities of raising TCKs. Now, if you don't know what a third culture kid is, all right, well, you're going to find out. This is an episode about parenting. And if you don't have children, well, you still need to listen or watch on YouTube because, well, for one thing, kingdom work takes a village. And ministry to children is major kingdom work. Matthew 19:14, Jesus says, let the little children come to me and don't hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. Well, that's what this is all about. This episode is actually about learning how to love the princesses and the princes of God's kingdom. And if you can communicate the gospel to a child, you might very well be able to communicate it to your own heart. So, Miss Debbie.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I call you Miss Debbie because the largest demographic of our company calls you Miss Debbie.
Right.
Because you minister to the children.
Yeah.
And the youth, the children and youth.
Yeah, and college and adults. Yeah, the whole spectrum.
From 0 to
30.
From 0 to 30.
Yeah, well, 26 because that's when they go off insurance, so on my tracking. But there's some that are 30 that I still reach out to. So, 0 to 30.
Yeah, so Miss Debbie, tell me who you are and what you've been doing with Serge and how you've been serving.
Yeah, so my name is Debbie Harrell. I serve as the TCK resource team leader, and that's third culture kid. I started off as the overseas educational advisor. I've been with Serge for 23 years. My background is education, child development. Undergraduate is child development, graduate work is education, and then, I talked a little bit about how God called me to ministry with Serge. I, in my wildest dreams, never imagined that I would ever serve overseas and travel all the places that God has taken.
I look forward to hearing more about that story.
Yeah.
I want to hear you, parenting in general. I'm the parent of 3 kids, and I'm still trying to figure it out forever.
I am too, and I have a 30-year-old.
So, just parenting in general and the gospel as the gospel engages parenting. But I also want to hear more about ministering to third culture kids and what that looks like, and just we'll just see where the conversation goes. But first I need to talk to you about parenting and driving.
Nice.
Nice.
That sounds good.
I got pretty self-righteous with my driving, and I told the kids, Lori and the kids, we were talking about driving because I think they asked, who do you want to teach you how to drive? Or we had the conversation or something.
There's a vulnerable question
right.
to be.
And I was like, clearly it's me.
Right, because I know all the rules and I know how to drive.
Like I'm a really good driver, and they're like, Talitha, my youngest, she goes, Dad, how many tickets have you gotten recently? And I was like, well, and then, because...
Wow, she knows. She's keeping count.
Well, I mean, it's open conversation.
Right.
Where I come home.
How many points do you have?
Well, we got a thing in the mail that said that I blew through a school bus stop sign. And there's photographic evidence of the bus, of the stop sign coming, opening.
And the little flag.
And the camera from the bus stop films, like, there's the front of the car, and there's me in the car. There's the side, and there's my profile driving the car, and then there's the back of the car.
Wow.
And so, like, here's this in the mail.
Documentation, yeah.
And thankfully that one didn't get reported on, like points or whatever.
Yeah.
Because
that can be pretty serious, yeah.
So they can't prove who was driving from photograph.
Even though they had
I mean,
your
I knew it
profile?
was me.
Yeah. Oh,
I knew
okay.
it was me. And it couldn't have been, well, Lori and I were like, was it you or is it me? Because it was her car.
Oh.
And we were actually taking the truck to get serviced. She was driving the truck and I was driving her car.
Oh, so
it was me. It was totally me.
So did you own it?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
And so it's like, oh no, it's like $300.
No, that's happened to me where it was blinking and I wasn't paying attention. I was going the speed limit, but because it was a school zone, and I was like, but I'm so good at being aware and stuff. So
yeah. And so then, a couple weeks later, I was having lunch with a friend. And I was talking about how, I never get pulled over. Not anymore. It was like when I was young. Never get pulled over. Later that day, I was taking my son to soccer practice. And it used to be a yield sign, but they turned it from a yield sign to a stop sign.
Yeah.
And I yielded right through that. And I look, there's no cars. Oh, look at that car parked on the side of the road. Well, he's parked, so not a big deal. Blaze through it. Ephraim's sitting there. And then, woo, 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 I get pulled over. And I was like, oh. And I was like, all right, well, this is what it looks like to get pulled over, buddy.
Yeah. I use that example because I remember when I was in college, there was this one called Speedway right in front of the college. And it went from 45 in this small patch to 35 and then back to 45. And I remember not paying attention and just blazing through that small patch. And police officer on a motorcycle. I saw the lights and I was like, oh. And I remember like the condition of my heart because I was like so angry that I got caught.
Right.
Not that I had done anything wrong.
Right.
But that I had gotten caught because I was always so good to, drive. Hello, officer. See me? I'm going the speed limit and stuff. I'm following the law. And then, it really showed me where the condition of my heart was because I wasn't upset that I had blazed through it, was inattentive and all that. But I was just so angry that I had gotten caught.
Yeah.
And so I use that a lot with my kids and just kind of talking about, when we sin and we get caught, where is the condition of our heart? Is it, because I got caught or is it, was there a real conviction and stuff?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an interesting moment because
I bet.
it was blatant. Dad screwed up.
Yeah.
And and my son is right there. My 13-year-old son is right there to witness the whole thing. And I was like, to the officer, I was like, could you, just let me off with a warning? Come on. this used to be a yield.
Oh, you asked?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Okay.
And he was like, sternly, he was like, absolutely not. And I was like, gee.
Wow. I don't think I've ever had the courage to even ask for
I got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's because he saw the citation of the... he looks up your record and he sees this dude blazes through stop signs. He blazes through school bus stop signs, and here he is. So anyway, so that's those two things are why Talitha was like, Dad, how many tickets do you have?
That's
so
hilarious.
funny.
I love it. Yeah, driving does definitely give us, insight into who we are. how we respond to struggle, our own sin. And I think sometimes parents forget, like, that their kids are in the back seat and have a first row seat to
they see everything. Yeah. If it's like Lori and I getting in a fight while we're in the car, or me breaking some traffic law while we're in the car.
Right.
But it's like, it's all there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, that's living unveiled. You know?
Truly.
Right? Yeah.
Truly.
So, that, you know, the fact that they can see you and have that example and model of, yeah, I'm not perfect. I'm not the Instagram perfection that I try to cultivate on social media.
Yeah.
You know, I struggle, you know, and we know that kids who see their parents struggle are more likely to come to them with their struggle.
I hope so.
Versus, you know, a parent who, I've got it all together, you know, not to show weakness or sin or vulnerability in front of their kids. You know, you're not approachable.
Yeah.
And stuff. So, yeah, driving does kind of help take those barriers down. There's so many other areas too, but driving is definitely one of those.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one. For me at least. It is amazing the beauty of young children and how much that's an adventure.
Yeah.
My kids it won't be long before I have 3 teenagers you know, in the house. And so right now it's 2. You know, and my third is 11 going on 21. So, you know, so she's already kind of acting like a teenager. So the way that we parent is different because the kids are different.
Right.
And I mean, I've never known what to do. That's why I'm glad you're here.
Well,
I'm always out of my
league
league
break
here.
It to you. So, you know, I think parents always, you know, all of us, we would love to have a rule book.
Yeah.
You know, a set of instructions, you know, because you get this squishy ball of humanity, you know, handed to you, and you're just like, you know, what do I do? How do I love them? And you rely a lot on how you were parented. And I think one of the things that I really, because my background is child development, family relations, education, and even as a believer, I never like matched those. I always just like, oh, okay, I can manage her behavior. You know, we're going with external regulation. You know, I care for her. I'm, you know, doing all these, and then you want your child developmentally to go to, you know, you've got co-regulation when they're in elementary, where they self-regulate and you're helping, and then, you know, you hope that at, you know, the teen years and college that it's completely self-regulation and all that. And yet that all goes to the wayside, you know, when there's the emotional part involved.
Yeah.
You know, because you're just like, how do I care and love this child and also give them the gospel? Because one of the things, you know, and when we were working with Rosemary Miller and Jack Klumpenhauer to write, you know, The Gospel-Centered Parent, I remember just like talking with Rosemary and Jack and be like, you know, I was a master at molding my child's outward behavior and not really going for the heart. I knew how to create a chart, you know, all of those, you know, with child development, Piaget, Skinner, Pavlov, and his salivating dogs, you know, I knew how to mold and shape behavior, you know, but to really enact heart change, you know, was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I really get to my child's heart and trusting in God's sovereignty, you know, to transform them? Because I knew I could shame her or, you know, you know, which is pretty harsh and mold that outward behavior, but what would it really look like parenting at a heart level, you know, and really incorporating the gospel in that. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, when we wrote Gospel-Centered Parent, you know, so many of our discussions, and I mean, it's so amazing. I mean, sitting with Rosemary Miller and Barbara Miller Giuliani, you know, I had actually just written, you know, What's Up, the taking kind of sonship for kids, and then, you know, right after New Growth was like, hey, how about Gospel-Centered Parent? Would you guys be interested? And I'm kind of like, well, I just want you guys to know that if I help with this, just know that I have failed in my parenting journey,
Right.
It's definitely not a pretty picture. And they're like, perfect, you're perfect, for that. And then when we were dividing all the articles, no one wanted to write on discipline. And so they were like, Debbie, you're a teacher. You know all about discipline. And I was like, okay. So,
you got voluntold.
Yeah, I did. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing journey for me, just really kind of reevaluating my parenting, and then, kind of going back and saying, wow, really looking at the gospel and how I was parented, and then what I thought parenting was, and really kind of incorporating all of that.
Yeah.
So.
Grace just comes so unnaturally for me. And so now I've been given the responsibility to reflect grace and impart grace and embody grace to my children.
Yeah.
And it's been, especially for my son who's 13, over the last maybe 3 years, I've really started to see how he's responding to situations as a 13-year-old. I'm responding to situations, that same kind of situation. So the heart level is the same. Of what does grace look like? What does it look like to function as if Jesus is alive and victorious, and his love for me is beyond my comprehension, in the midst of me struggling to figure out for myself how I would respond to this situation that angers me, and which is not very different from the situation where my 13-year-old son is struggling with his anger.
Right.
Or my 44-year-old despair, his 13-year-old despair. Both of these things are gospel issues. Gospel. The gospel goes, all right, let me at him.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, there's so much to unpack in that, when we talk about, especially like high emotion. I think one thing parents and what I remember too is, parenting, first of all, is a process. There's not going to be one event,
right,
that will change your child on a dime. This is a process. And especially as I have parents are like you said, with the anger, the high emotion, you need to remember, diffuse first, and then you can process. Because I used to always think, I need to, deal with this right now. I remember as a first-year teacher, it was in Tucson, Arizona. It was my first year of teaching, and the school that I taught at was it was a trailer park, so there was a lot of high mobility, a lot of poverty, and I remember the first week on the playground, and I had two of my sweet little boys I've never seen second graders just like punch each other. And I remember just being so angry, and I had superhuman strength. I went there and I pulled them apart, and I was like, you say you're sorry,
Oh, right.
I cannot believe I
Their
did that.
amygdalas are just
and they had sweat and dirt, and they were like, I'm sorry,
Right.
And I did that, and I even look back to when I did that, instead of diffusing and then process, I wanted to go straight to the process of, you apologize, and you apologize now. I'm sorry. And at this particular school, because, parents were at work, and when we had suspensions and stuff, it was called in-house suspension, and so they had to go and sit in ready position the rest of the day. And then I remember having lunch with them, and then kind of sitting down, and then really just kind of asking, and still fumbling. I was only like 25 years old at the time. It was my first teaching job, and I remember just like, okay, tell me what happened. And then I heard the story, and then I was like, well, tell me how that made you feel. Because their first response was, well, he did, they wanted to go outside.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
And I was like, instinctively, I knew I had to bring it back around. Well, what were you feeling at the time? Tell me how you responded. What made you, want to do that? And I remember processing through that struggle with them. And, they were crying. I got a little teary just to hear like the background. They had been, they were best friends, and it had been, an event that had happened outside of the school, and they had brought it onto the school.
Right.
And I just remember then giving them an opportunity. I was like, well, what would you have done differently? And even back then as a young teacher, being able to still, even though it was a secular, a public school, and I was limited in, what I could say gospel-wise, but I still was, pathway for repentance and a pathway for them to really be sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, true repentance.
Right.
And I remember them both just weeping and, but we, it was again, diffuse and then process. And I think a lot of times as parents, we forget that because we want to just be like, the meltdown in the grocery store,
Right.
You will obey and you will obey now and stuff. It's like, you can diffuse, give them a moment to kind of regroup, get your own anger, because, that when you get that anger, that's kind of a red flag, even for you. Why am I angry?
That's right.
And then let me help you walk through this, and you can wait, the process part, you can take a moment to stop, get in the car, wait till we get in the car, or, let's wait till we get home, and then, take that time to process.
Yeah. Preaching the gospel to yourself doesn't get much more sophisticated than that.
Yeah.
For a child, for a grown-up, it's the same, And that may be the gift of parenting for me, where I want to lean into one of my children with grace, with the truth of the gospel, with pursuing repentance and reconciliation, pursuing conflict resolution between two or between us or whatever. Yeah. And I'm imparting these things, and the Holy Spirit goes, and you. And what about you? Same thing, And so the gift is, if I can preach the gospel to a child, I might be able to preach it to myself. Because that's where I'm gonna understand at that childhood level, and it's probably where I need to understand.
Well, and think about like compassion. You're able to enter into that brokenness because you understand, what it is to get angry or to, feel slighted.
Yeah.
It's hard to, when you come in with the rules or the piety, you'll get the teenage shoulder shrug, like, whatever. Just keep talking. I'm like Charlie Brown's teacher. Right.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes you just not, it's not getting to the heart. It's not, computing or anything like that. But when you can show compassion, come alongside, and let them feel that they are heard, that, you see them, and be able to kind of enter into that struggle and even say, I've done that before. I've lied before, or I've, been angry at my brother, and what is the redemptive part of that? How does Jesus, help us in the forgiveness, how, and again, I think as parents, we need to be really aware of guilt, and I get this asked the most, distinguishing between guilt self-talk and shame self-talk.
Yeah, talk about that. What's the difference between those?
So a lot of times we talk about it like when we talk about sanctification, that cross chart that is so amazing. And when kids, especially around 7 or 8, conceptually, when they start to see their sin as bigger, and then, of course, the cross chart is that when you see your sin is bigger, then God's forgiveness is bigger. But sometimes kids don't see God's forgiveness as big. They see their sin as bigger. So there's like little gaps and stuff. And so, they can be really weighted down with guilt and shame. And so when we're talking about guilt self-talk, that's, I did something wrong, I'm sorry, I'm loved and forgiven. Shame is, I did something wrong, I did something bad, I'm
I
bad.
am bad.
Yeah. And I'm unlovable and unforgivable. And I think as parents, we really kind of navigate and can, that even as we talk to our kids, as you've done something wrong, compassion would be coming alongside them. I've done that too, buddy. Obviously there's going to be natural consequences to, behavior, but being able to, like you said, speaking the gospel in, you are loved, you are a beloved child, you are forgiven, you are worthy of forgiveness, and it's okay. We all mess up, but again, there are consequences. But if shaming a child, you're bad, and offering no, pathway for even redemption or forgiveness in the way that we speak to our kids, you can even hear them, because as kids learn, and it's in the What's Up curriculum that we talk about, the cross chart and where the gaps can be, and kind of that weight of just feeling like, there's no, God can't love me enough because my sin is just so much bigger than his forgiveness. And that can really happen to kids and even
absolutely.
Adults. We can sit there and be like, this is one that's just not going to be forgiven enough. And that's a lie. God's forgiveness is big enough for us. And so as we navigate when we're talking to our kids, helping them and being able to listen for, are they shame self-talking or, guilt self-talking, and being able to distinguish that.
I like how you're kind of creating a context for shame to, my wife is a huge gardener.
I know, I've seen some of her lovely things.
Yeah. So the thing about
cultivating
a haven for the good flowers, actually chokes out the weeds.
Yeah.
If you make the soil just right, and if you put you put the plants that you want in the proper place, you're not really going to have to do as much weeding,
right?
Because it's not the context for weeds to thrive. So I love how you're talking about, it's not just speaking against shame; it's also creating a context where shame can't grow. Yeah. Shame can't grow here.
It still does.
Oh yeah, there's always weeding.
Yeah.
My wife would say, there's always weeding.
As much as you want to control that environment, it still happens, and that's trusting, and that's the hardest part. Prayer and trust. I have this little acronym, PARENT, PARENT. And at the first one is prayer, because that's not our natural inclination.
Yeah.
We want action.
Right.
And yet prayer is our greatest tool that we can have. And at the end of that, T, trust. Trust God's salvation for them. You can't change your child as much as you think that you can. You
just can't.
You just can't. It is the work of the Holy Spirit that will transform them. I remember in that first chapter, Rosemarie talks about, they circled the wagons as far as their kids only listened to Christian music, only watched Christian TV, they went to Christian school, and all those things are really good, but they forgot one thing, that sin is on the inside as well, that they had to trust, because when struggle happens and you're like, but I created the most perfect environment, how could a weed have possibly grown in there? Like with Lori, wait, it was the perfect conditions, everything was sterile, and yet a weed still showed up and stuff. And that's the same with our kids, and stuff. We need to remember we are broken sinners, parenting broken sinners, in a broken world. Parenting is just this, hard space of, struggle, joy, suffering, sin, vulnerability. There's a lot in there.
It is mysterious. I've often wondered, what is this? And the baseline answer is Jesus goes, I'm using this for your sanctification. I'm going to be saving you through parenting. But it's just mysterious. It's mysterious that the Lord would have us taking care of these little humans, but the greatest gift that it's been has as it's just showing me who I am as I'm preaching the gospel to them. It's preaching the gospel to myself as well.
Right.
And and my kids feel the expectations of being a PK, a pastor's kid,
Yep.
So then we have MKs, so we have third culture kids,
Yep.
and so the ministry has this certain effect. And I'd talk more about not just being a third culture kid, but also raising third culture kids.
Yeah. So, my journey with third culture kids started 23 years ago. In 2000, I was teaching third grade, and my sending church, Redeemer Presbyterian, were asking for teachers. It was like 3 weeks till this conference in Malaga, and they're like, we need teachers. And I was kind of like, I think I can do that. I can, teach. I've never thought myself as a missionary, but I can go and teach some kids in Spain. And so someone gave me a buddy pass, because I only had 3 weeks to raise, some support. So someone gave me one of those buddy passes for standby ticket. Yeah. And, packed all my stuff, and I was going to wow these kids with all these amazing lessons. And by the time that I arrived in Malaga, all my luggage was lost.
Oh, no.
I had, in that 3-week period, cracked my tooth. So I had like a partial, not a permanent, but just like a
temporary cap or whatever.
Yeah. And then my mom had gotten really ill where we weren't sure if she was going to make it. So by the time I got to Malaga, I hadn't slept for 24 hours. I was like... depleted. I mean, when you talk about ministry from weakness, I had nothing. I mean, literally, I was borrowing somebody else's shoes. And so I had these 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, about 10 of them. And the funny thing is some of them now are with the company, serving overseas, which shows you kind of just such amazing gift.
Your legacy with this company is, we'll get there.
Yeah, anyways. But
go on.
I was like, stop. But it really made it so that I had to really look to see who these kids were. I wasn't wowing them with who I was, but God had put me in a place where I want you to see who they are, and so the formal definition for third culture kid is a child who's been raised in a country other than their parents' passport country. And really that tension for them is they grow up in a country they consider home, and yet that country considers them a foreigner,
Right.
And so, and you probably already know this question. What question do you think that they don't really like being asked? Where are you from? And that question has a really complicated answer. Well, I was born in Texas, but my family moved to Australia, and then I grew up in Ireland, and now I'm back in Virginia for college. So that sense of where are you from, identity, that's like one of the main things I think our kids kind of struggle with, because so much of where you're from is kind of your identity. It gives you a sense of belonging,
right.
And these guys are considered cultural chameleons.
Yeah.
That idea of belonging and fitting in, the cultural because a chameleon changes for its outside environment. So any culture that they go into, they get fitting in. I can change the outside and stuff, but that sense of belonging, with their families is really what we really encourage, because they move so much. We have this one activity that we encourage families to do is like, what's your family motto? Think about what are the things, there's no name calling in this family because that brings shame. Cultivating relationships with their siblings. We see that even as adults, how valuable that is, because, your siblings will eventually be caring for your parents, and, those relationships you hear sometimes so heartbreaking where siblings fall out, of relationship with another. We really encourage our third culture, kids and mission families to really help cultivate those relationships with their siblings, because they're in the car for 6 hours at a time, or at an airport, for hours and stuff. And their siblings are their first friends. Right. Identity, belonging, sibling relationships, those are really a lot. Anchoring, and we have this one really fun activity where it's an anchor, because a lot of times, what are the things that stay the same no matter what culture you're in? What are the things about you that stay the same? Because a lot of times kids, especially navigating emotions, there's a lot of grief, and that grief can stack up. And that's, called grief stacking. And we help our kids navigate grief by processing those blocks that have stacked up. It doesn't mean it's solving it, but we're helping them process. One fun thing that all of our families do is like high, low, or yay, duck, yuck, duck. I don't know if you've ever heard of, you've not heard, no. Yay, duck, yuck, duck. So you've not, no. I should have brought you a duck.
I actually don't know. One of the things I want to ask is, like, where do you do all of these things with the folks in our company?
So I do debriefings with kids online. We have we have a book club. They're Zoom hangouts, really. We have a book club. We have a girls' Bible study. I have a teen hangout this Saturday. We just had a whole group of our teens get together, and I had given them some money to go out to dinner together, and then we did a video call. So it's all kind of remote, and then at conferences, really any way that I can connect with our kids. It's mostly, through Zoom and stuff. Like this Saturday, we have like an escape room that we're going to try to do virtually with our teens. But yeah, I mean, just,
I love it.
Trying to stay connected. But yay, duck, yuck, duck. When you think about like the paradox within a day, there's good parts of the day, struggles, bad parts of the day, highs, lows. And in that paradox, there are a pair of ducks. So you've got yay, duck. What's a yay, duck? Tell me something good. Tell me what was hard about today, or a yuck duck that you have. And we'll be on a call, and kids will be like, I have two yay ducks, Miss Debbie. Can I share 2 yay ducks? I'm like, of course you can share 2 yay ducks. I can't really think of a yuck duck. We have one family that has like high, low, like a yay duck, yuck duck, and did you know? Like, then they share something that they learned today, or they want to cultivate gratitude. What are you thankful for today? And, what was a yay duck? What was a yuck duck? What are you really grateful for? And those all kind of help give like a view of what went on today, and a space for your kids.
Get the conversation started.
Yeah. So those are things, as we come alongside parents, and a lot of times before families are deployed, I'll meet with them, meet their kids, and then, we'll get them grouped together within, trying to figure out time zones can be a little, a little tricky, because when we start a call, it'll be like, okay, what time is it where you are, and it's so hilarious on some of these calls, just their dedication. Like I had one little girl, her family was in transit, and they were in Kenya in the airport. So the mom had, the phone video call while she was in, the airport. Then we had one little guy, and there was a storm, and the power had gone out. So he had the mosquito netting, and he had one of those headlamps that his dad had made, the hotspot for his phone. And so he was in the dark, and we're like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, it's raining. The power's out. So yeah, these phone calls, these hangouts that we have with all of our kids
are such an adventure.
Oh my goodness. And they're hilarious. And we always do poll questions. We'll have a scavenger hunt, or we'll, we'll be reading a book together. And then, we have the Bible study with the teen girls. And so, yeah, we do all these ways to connect with them.
I love it.
Because there's this thing called the Great Aunt Rosie Effect. When you have an adult outside of the family that connects with your kids, prays with them, is intentional with them, it really helps them as they, grow in their faith. And so I'm striving for the Great Aunt Rosie,
You are Serge's Great Aunt Rosie.
Yeah. And I have two amazing young women that work with me, Mary Spar Putrasahan and Glory Guy, who also are going for the Great Aunt Rosie award as well. They really have been great and just, and they keep it real. They're younger and hipper and help me, figure out like, wait, that we don't use that word anymore, or something. So,
that's slang now?
Yeah. Or no, Miss Debbie, that's a bad song.
You can't.
Wait, why is that a bad song? If you really listen to the lyrics, I never thought about that. That is kind of inappropriate,
Go team.
Yeah,
Go team.
Yeah. So we all keep each other straight and stuff. But yeah, I would say for third culture parents, just creating that, family resiliency because they're, on the move. And I remember one of my guys, his family grew up in Uganda, and on his Facebook page, he had his hometown as Uganda. But when his family moved to Kenya, he changed his hometown to Kenya. Home was wherever their family was, and just watching these kids as they cultivate their relationship with their siblings, the people that they have become in college, still wanting to go into the field, either short-term, long-term, maintaining their faith has been such a joy, to watch, and there are some of our kids that are struggling in their faith. They want to own that, and yet they're willing to have those conversations. So yeah, we do debriefs, we have hangouts, we just do it all. Like all my college kids, I do care packages for them, as every, I think it's about 3 times a year. I've got it's just a little tiny FedEx, or UPS box, the flat rate box and stuff. But it's just fun stuff inside. Just want to know,
love it.
I'm thinking of you. Reaching out to them. We have a WhatsApp group that I'm constantly keeping tabs of them, making sure how you're doing. Okay, how can I pray? Do you need to meet? So just any way that we can, maintain connection, help them as they are navigating adulthood or just TCK-ness,
right?
So yeah, that's who they are. And I remember after that trip in Spain, just getting to know those kids. And it was really interesting because during the week, the luggage finally came, and I had gotten
you got your shoes back.
Yeah, I got my shoes back, but I also brought like Cheetos and goldfish and bubble yum. And that's the number one request I get when I take
goldfish.
Goldfish is my number one.
Are you serious?
Yes, goldfish
That's
is my number
amazing.
one request.
My kids are gonna love that you said that.
Wow, this stuff is
that's amazing.
Valuable.
Yeah, my kids are gonna be. Miss Debbie said
goldfish
has. We have to have those in the house.
But I remember during the conference, parents were like asking me, "Hey, you're a teacher. Can we sit, and meet with you?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure," and answering questions. And so by the end of the conference, I remember saying to one of the board members, "You guys really need somebody that can help, with education stuff and like that." And he's like, "Well, why don't you send us your resume?" I was like, "No."
Last words.
Not me. No, somebody who feels called to missions, can, do this and stuff. And then about 3 months later, Bob Osborne showed up in my 3rd grade classroom. And you remember, Bob is what? 6?
Yeah.
6
tall.
Or something, very tall. And he sat in this 3rd grade chair, and started talking to me. He's like, "Well, Debbie, we'd like you to be."
He crammed himself into that little chair.
And he was so kind. And just, we'd like you to be our overseas educational advisor. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, "Well, we'd like you to come, help consult with parents, help with kids. You need to raise support." What's that like? Soul crushing. No.
Not easy. Super not easy.
So fun. Still doing it 23 years later.
Oh yeah, always.
Full time.
Yeah,
Oh my
totally.
goodness. So yeah, that's kind of how that story, and then from there, just, my background in education, child development, my own stumbling along my own parenting journey, and just learning the gospel. I took sonship like 4 times, and I remember thinking, gosh, this would be great to have, for my middle school students, and that's where What's Up kind of came. Jack Klumpenhauer came on board, and I remember, because my 8th grade girls always loved to sit and talk about their feelings, and my 8th grade boys, it was like, oh, do I have to talk about my feelings? Bible studies were really hard, but, we created this curriculum that was like, originally it was called Sonship for Kids, but, they were like, no, we need something snappy, so What's Up? Is, and so it's, it's, you can doodle in it, there's drawing pictures, circling things, just kind of really engaging, but just taking those concepts, sanctification, understanding sin, we took like we made the shark chart, because, for sonship, understanding sin, you've got that iceberg thing, and I was like, kids don't really resonate with an iceberg, but a shark,
right?
Totally, they can get into that. Justification, we talk about the report card, because in sonship they talk about changing book covers, and kids were kind of like, but report card, that's where you really understand justification and stuff. But so that's kind of how all that came about. And then I've been 23 years working,
I love it,
with kids and seeing them grow into adults and still being a part of their lives, and it's been quite a journey and a blessing and amazing. So as a pastor, when you think about planting a church, the first question is like, okay, where do we want to plant a church? The second question is, what are we going to do with the kids? Right.
That's literally question number 2.
Yeah.
And how are we going to minister to the kids? How are we going to love on the kids? How are we going to be a family of believers? How are we going to be a community? Well, you have to answer that second question.
Yeah.
And so I love that for 23 years, you have been serving Serge in this way. You are ministering to the largest demographic of the ministry,
Yeah.
So it's like
kind of that hidden,
when you think about it, how many?
About 395.
Children and youth.
Yeah, it's a lot of kids. And then, when we have conferences, I think the last conference, we had 217 kids there.
That's amazing.
And just had the best time
with
them. Well, you were part of that.
Yeah.
You helped lead, them in song, and you created like those songs for helping them memorize their verses. And it was so...
Yeah, it was an honor.
It was so sweet.
When I was... this is a longer story than maybe the podcast, so maybe offline.
But I want to hear it.
Well, it's a little... So, all right, so it's confession time.
Okay.
Bless me, Debbie, for I have sinned.
Oh, no.
Not exactly, but it's so funny. I'm going to tell you.
I'm going to cry.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see. So here's my story.
I'll have to apologize, won't I?
No.
Okay.
No, this is all me.
Right?
No, this is about me. This is all about what's going on in my heart. So what was going on in my heart? So I've been a worship pastor for years and years and years, and so they called me up and they were like, "Hey, do you want to lead worship?" And I was like, "Yes," for the kids. And I was like, and it was.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
It was like I went straight to my therapist, because it was like, what just happened in my heart was a Hurricane 5 whatever point earthquake thing. Something
right there,
happened.
Jim.
Something happened in my heart when they were like, "Hey, do you want to lead worship?" And I was like, "Oh, for the kids, and I was like,
big guys. No. Yeah.
oh, and so I did some wrestling in my heart because it was a huge. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. So the bigger the pride, the harder it fell. And so it was just, it had, talk about bullseye. It was like the Spirit laid into me at like at a, just like bullseye.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it exposed this pride where I was like, I don't think I want to go. I don't think I want to do this. Like Lori and I are talking about this, and I'm like, I cannot believe I am like this, but I am like this, it was a severe wrestling match. And so here's what happened. Because, I was there.
I know. We had multiple meetings and you hit it so well. I didn't know.
No.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so before Spain, before the 2022 conference, I had a dream. Oh. And here's the dream. I dreamt that the King of Spain, called me up and he said, I want you to escort. I'm visiting with my entourage. I'm visiting Philadelphia. And I want you to escort all the children of the dignitaries and the prince and all the royalty. I want you to escort the royal entourage through Philadelphia.
Wow.
I want you to do it. And
oh my goodness, that is so.
And in my dream, I had this. I ran to a bar where all my friends were, and I was like, I blazed through the bar, opened the doors, and I'm like, guess what? The King of Spain asked me to take care of the children of the dignitaries,
Wow.
And I woke up weeping.
I bet.
Because the king asked me to lead worship for the princes and the princesses of the Serge conference entourage.
Yeah. And that's who they are.
Yeah.
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 These are
like, lest I forget that these children are royalty.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
Jim.
Don't ever forget that these children are royalty.
Thank you for sharing that.
So,
that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great reminder for me too, because it is like when you're in children's ministry, it's so easy to fall into that it's just childcare. No, it's not. It is kingdom building.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, you were in the
story.
business of royal caretaking.
Yeah.
And so it was an honor. It was such an honor.
Amazing.
And so what was
both you and Lori.
So then the high point, maybe one of the high points, the prayer times in the afternoons.
Oh, right.
That was my high point of that conference, just hearing every team sharing their stories and then us getting to come around those people. But I was in the cafeteria one evening for dinner. And Spain's great because it's like wine is on tap. Next to the beer and so I had my tray of food and I had my glass where I'm pushing the thing and wine's going in, and no, I had put my tray down, and so my other hand, a little hand grabs my pinky or something and pulls on me, tugs on me, and I turn around and there's one of the girls, I can't remember who it was, one of the girls from the time where I was singing to them,
Right.
And she's dragging me away, and I was like, all right, well, wine, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
So she drags me over to her parents, and she goes, this is the guy that I was telling you about. And I was like,
sweetness.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like,
He's a rock
hi,
star.
Everybody.
This is the rock star.
Hi, everybody. And so then the mom goes, oh, hey, I got to tell you, they've been calling you all week, that we watched this show, and Dave Matthews is on that show.
Oh, nice.
And he sings songs to the kids on that show.
That is sweet.
And so in that moment, there was a little bit of a,
Yeah.
Dave Matthews has no problem singing to kids.
Right.
There was that. But then she goes, and so she's been calling you Dave Matthews all week.
Oh, nice.
And I was like,
wow.
That is the greatest compliment
right.
that I could ever get,
Wow.
And so like that little conversation
Yeah.
was such a beautiful gift to me,
Yeah.
and a continual humbling, because Dave Matthews is, I'm not worthy, you know. so to be called, so
I've watched you, you know.
and so it was like Jesus goes, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you. And you are ministering to the royal family.
Yeah.
And so it was, that was it was so, you know, and I went back to my wine, and it was like the wine.
Oh, good.
The wine was,
there was redemption.
Don't worry, I got my wine.
Yeah.
But the wine is just sweeter after you have little interactions. A little 5-year-old girl, and that was a 5-year-old ministering to me. Mm-hmm. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I had the honor, and it was an honor, and it was a humbling thing that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That is.
I was afraid I was going to share that story with you.
No, I'm glad you did. I mean, I was so grateful for you coming and singing and leading them in worship. I mean, Spain was a time of faith and stretching us. But it was also so beautiful to see the kids, you know, with connection. Our teens had the best time. I mean, they're all like, when is the next time that we, you know, can connect? Because, you know, with third culture kids, they value relationships.
Absolutely.
And they enter relationships at a deep level. You know, they have to say a lot of goodbyes. So as they're stacking that grief tower, you know, in all the goodbyes, and it's just because relationships have such high value, you know, to our kids, and fostering that and helping them come alongside them has been incredible. And these conferences has really helped our kids and our families, you know, connect really well, pray. And like you said, those afternoon prayer times were so valuable in just listening of how God is moving the kingdom forward through our families, you know, who are part of kingdom building.
You know, because when the king says, "Hey, I want you to go serve. I want you to go serve my princes and princesses." Yeah. You know, you go, I want to tell everybody that the king asked me. The king wants me to participate in this. The king has called me. You know, the king has called you to 23 years of serving in such creative ways. You know, looking for any way that you can share the love of God.
Right, through a duck, through a duck and Play-Doh, tree bags,
just whatever, you know. And so, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for letting me hang out too.
I traveled miles just to be with you.
Right.
Planes, trains, and automobiles. I came, you know, just to hang out with you. You know. So.
I don't know much about other missions agencies, but one thing I'm proud of about Serge is the way we endeavor to care for our missionaries and their children. When God calls a couple to leave their home and go to another culture, by default, he's also calling the children. They too are sacrificing for the kingdom, and God promises to meet with them in that place. And since 2001, Debbie has been ministering to the largest demographic of Serge. Miss Debbie is amazing. Right, kids? And if you want more of Debbie's wisdom, we have a valuable resource for you, not just in her books and curricula that you can find at newgrowthpress.com, but she also has a webinar where she digs deeper into a lot of the parenting ideas that she and I discussed. Of all the many helpful and educational webinars that Serge has on our website and on our YouTube channel, this one is by far the most popular, and you'll see why. I'll have a link in the show notes for that webinar. Oh, and I have homework for you, okay? Here's your Grace at the Fray homework for the week. It's a question that you have to ask. If you're a parent, you have to ask your kids this question. If you're not a parent, you have to ask someone who's close to you, a friend, a spouse, a roommate, someone close enough to you where they can see below the surface. And here's the question. If there was something about me that you could change, what would it be? Ask that question and let me know how it goes. It's the kind of question that can become a catalyst for cultivating grace in your life and those around you? I'm going to post this on Serge's Instagram, and I want to hear your answers to how it went in the comments. And let's get a conversation going that I think can catalyze grace in our lives. But maybe you are having a hard time preaching the gospel to your kids. And maybe that's because you've forgotten the gospel for yourself. If so, I want to invite you to take a pause from your normal life to experience a week that will change your life. Sonship Week is a time for you to bathe yourself in the good news of the gospel so that you can actually have good news for your family. So go book your flight to Hollywood, Florida, and meet me and the rest of the renewal team and all our special guests for Sonship Week, this October 22nd through 27th. It will change your life. And I suppose, now that I think about it, this entire episode has turned into a prayer request on behalf of our children. We bring them to Jesus with all the fervor that we can muster, and we say, Lord, have mercy. We love our children. We love them more than anything. And then immediately, the Spirit reminds us that our Heavenly Father is good. And though we are broken and sinful, we would never, if our child asked for bread, we would never give them a stone. How much more does He love them? How much more does He love us? So as you go, you beloved child of God, go and play in His kingdom. Go bring love and generosity to the places that need it most. Everywhere you go. And when you go with this blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face to smile down on you. May the Lord be gracious to you, turn His bright eyes to you, and give you His peace. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, life everlasting. Amen.